There's a type of freedom many people don't discover until much later in life. The freedom of no longer needing applause for every decision you make. No longer checking if people approve before trusting yourself. No longer feeling emotionally crushed every time someone dislikes you, ignores you, or disagrees with your choices, because for a long time, many people live as performers, adjusting their personality depending on who they're around, trying to stay likable, acceptable, wanted. But eventually, that becomes exhausting. And little by little, people begin asking themselves, what would my life feel like if I stopped living for other people's approval? That question changes more than most expect. One of the quietest forms of emotional exhaustion is constantly adjusting yourself to avoid disapproval. You become careful about what you say, what you post, how you act, even what you truly feel. Not because you're fake, but because somewhere along the way, acceptance became connected to safety. So people learn to shape themselves around other people's expectations. And after years of doing that, many no longer know what actually feels authentic anymore. That's the dangerous part about needing validation too deeply. You slowly lose connection with your own voice, your own instincts, your own preferences, because your identity becomes built around reaction instead of truth. Maturity changes the way people view opinions, especially random opinions. Emotionally grounded people stop treating every judgment like a life sentence. They realize some criticism is useful, and some is simply noise. That distinction matters, because if someone absorbs every outside opinion emotionally, their inner world becomes unstable very quickly. One compliment lifts them up. One harsh comment destroys their mood. And eventually, their emotional state belongs to everyone except themselves. But emotionally independent people become more selective. They ask, does this opinion come from someone whose perspective genuinely matters to me? If the answer is no, they stop carrying it emotionally, and honestly, that mindset creates enormous peace over time. If you've started caring less about outside approval recently, comment, living honestly. Because one of the strongest things a person can do is remain authentic in a world constantly trying to shape them into something else. And before we close this series, there's one final shift worth talking about. You can often feel when someone trusts themselves internally. They move through life with less hesitation, less performance, less emotional dependence on how they're perceived every second. That doesn't mean they become selfish or disconnected. It simply means their decisions are no longer controlled by fear of rejection. And that creates a very different kind of energy. They speak more honestly, choose relationships more carefully, walk away from unhealthy situations faster, not because they think they're superior, but because they no longer abandon themselves to maintain approval. And that shift quietly changes everything: confidence, boundaries, emotional stability, even the quality of relationships they attract, because self-trust affects every part of life. There's something deeply peaceful about no longer feeling responsible for being liked by everyone. You stop carrying conversations home in your head, stop replaying every interaction, stop needing constant reassurance that you're enough, and life becomes simpler emotionally, not perfect, simpler. You laugh more naturally, rest more deeply, speak more honestly, because your mind is no longer trapped inside endless self-monitoring. And maybe that's what emotional freedom actually looks like. Not becoming fearless, not becoming emotionally detached, just becoming comfortable enough with yourself that your worth no longer changes. Every time someone approves or disapproves of you, maybe growing emotionally is not about becoming someone completely new. Maybe it's about returning to yourself, without needing permission from the outside world first. If this series stayed with you in any way, leave a comment. Becoming myself. I've truly appreciated everyone who spent time reflecting through these conversations together. And in the next series, we're stepping into a different kind of growth. Not only emotional healing, but building a stronger inner life. We'll explore discipline, mindset, purpose, resilience, and the habits that create long-term emotional strength. Because peace is powerful, but purpose gives that peace direction. See you in the next series.